Who wants to see a low buck LS cam test? Today we're testing a $179 camshaft shipped to your door. That's right. How much power does it make? And more importantly, does it work well under boost? Hello everybody, I'm Richard Oldner, and as always, welcome to the channel. Today we're looking at low buck LS cams. Do they actually work? There's a lot of things out there on the internet. There's a lot of very inexpensive cams, and here's what I can tell you about the very inexpensive cams. Sometimes you get what you pay for. I've heard horror stories that include the camshaft not being the specs that they asked for. They wanted a sloppy stage 2, and in some instances what they got was basically just a stock cam. I had another episode where a guy ordered a cam, and not only were the specs incorrect, but the cam itself, the metallurgy of the cam was wrong. It was basically a flat tappet camshaft. It was supposed to be for a hydraulic roller LS application. So if you tried to run that, it would immediately destroy itself. So beware of some of the really inexpensive cams. Sometimes you just get what you pay for. But what I'm doing is demonstrating how the cam that I have to offer, $179 low buck truck, I'm going to show you how well it works on a naturally aspirated 5.3 liter compared to the factory cam, and then also show you how well it works under boost. Because yes, every cam is a turbo cam. Okay guys, let's jump right in and find out how much these inexpensive cams are. And obviously I'm testing the ones that I am selling currently for $179 shipped, and I'll go ahead and put my email down here so you guys can order those if you're interested in them. But the thing I wanted to show is, because as we talked about earlier, you know, there are a lot of things to look at when you're talking about these inexpensive cams. There's a lot of ways to make them wrong. You know, just the specs themselves. Are you actually getting the specs that they're saying? We went through metallurgy, you know, all the things. So those are important things, but let's find out how well these cams work. And what I did was we ran them naturally aspirated on your kind of typical 5.3. I happen to have an L33 laying around. And then we ran it also with a little bit of boost, like 7 pounds or so. So let's take a look at that. So our combination was the aluminum L33 that I got from the wrecking yard. It had the stock throttle body, stock truck intake manifold, the 799 heads. It already had a valve spring upgrade because we were going to be using the, it had a set of actually BTR valve springs in it. On the 799 heads. But one of the things that we did different on this one is instead of running the L33 camshaft, I actually compared it to the LM7 camshaft is. Now, if you take a look at the video that I have up, I have a video where we compared all of these different stock camshafts on a 5.3, and the difference between the LM7 and we called it the HO 5.3 camshaft, because that's kind of what this is. Back in the day, you know, it was like 8 or 10 horsepower. It wasn't a whole bunch of a difference between the cam, but there was some. So we ran the LM7 cam. Like I said, the 799 heads. The L33 was an all aluminum 5.3 short block that had flat top pistons. We ran it with long tube headers the way that we always do, a Mazira electric water pump, and a Holley HP management system. So it was tuned. We had, in this case, 80 pound injectors, and we ran it on 91 octane. We run it cold so that we can run all of the timing and make all of the power that we want. But if we take a look at the power output offered by this set, what is essentially an L33 with no accessories on it and long tube headers, but with the LM7 camshaft, it made 355 horsepower at 5,300, and over here it made 381 foot-pounds at about 4,000 RPM. 4,000 and 4,100 were very close, because you could see it kind of has what we call a torque plateau up there kind of at the top. And here's what happened after we put the Super Richie kind of low buck truck camshaft in. I'll go ahead and put the specs up here, but it's 552 lift, both intake and exhaust. It is a 207, 220 something duration at 50, and then 107 degree lobe separation angle. And here's what happened when we put that low buck truck camshaft in. You can see, as we would expect from LS motors, we picked up a lot of power. We picked up a lot of power and torque. There was a slight drop here down below 3,000 RPM. Not a ton. But I didn't try adding a bunch more timing there to see if there was a way to try to adjust that. But excuse me, at least with the long tube headers that we were running on this, long tube headers and collector extensions, we did see a slight drop with the slightly bigger camshaft. But with this truck camshaft, we made peak number of 422 horsepower, and it was above 400 from 5200 on out. Peak torque checked in at 417 foot-pounds. If you look at this there's a little dip right here. I looked back now that I'm editing the video. We looked back at the data logging and saw that right there was a 2-degree change in timing prior to the peak torque. So I'm thinking that we could have played with that a little bit just to get the curve smoother. I don't think it would have made any more peak torque. I just think it would have made that transition there a little bit smoother. But hey, you live and learn. But you can see pretty good gains. We picked up 67 horsepower from the camshaft. Again, all normal stuff. When you put a camshaft on a 5.3, they have all the things that they want, and it just needs more cam timing. And we picked up 33 extra foot-pounds of torque. So let's take a look and see what happens when we add boost. Okay guys, in the previous video we took a look at what happens when we ran our NA 5.3 liter. We compared it, did a cam comparison. The factory LM7 camshaft compared to the Super Ritchie low buck truck camshaft. We picked up pretty good power, picked up 67 horsepower, and these are the gains. So we went from 355 horsepower to 422 horsepower. But the question is now, how well does this low buck truck camshaft work as a turbo camshaft? And as it turns out, it works out, turbo cam here, works out like every other camshaft does with turbos. It works out just fine, because the stock cam works good with the turbo, this cam works good with the turbo. It just multiplies whatever's there, as we've seen many times. But let's take a look. So we have our 5.3. We still got the stock throttle body and truck manifold, 799 heads. We have valve springs on it. We have the Super Ritchie low buck truck camshaft, and we ran it with long tube headers and stuff. And then I took that stuff off and we installed our turbo kit. We had an S480 turbo. It was a T4, a Borg-Warner piece. We had the ProCharger air-to-water intercooler running Dyno water. We had 2 TurboSmart 45 millimeter wastegates on it with a custom Y pipe that I use for almost all the turbo testing. And we run 2 wastegates on the engine dyno to have absolute control. In this case, we just ran it on the gate. So we just had a reference line going from the intake manifold to the wastegates, and then a T splitting it off, to each one of the wastegates. We had a TurboSmart blow-off valve after the intercooler going into the stock throttle body and stock intake manifold. And then we ran this on E85. We tried running the NA motor on E85, and we really didn't pick up hardly any power. So usually on these like standard compression things, we're running 91, and because we run them cold enough, we can run all the timing in them and we can make all the power. And E85 doesn't add too much. So before we started doing the turbo stuff, we put E85 in it. I just went down to a local gas station and got 10 or 15 gallons of E85 just right out of the pump, came back, and we replaced the fuel system with that. We still had big enough injectors to run this kind of power level. And here's what happened. We'll start off. Here's what happened when we ran the turbo on the low buck truck camshaft. So you can see we made good power. This was at a peak boost of not quite 7 pounds, 6.6, 6.7 PSI, and you can see that the low buck truck camshaft made good power with the turbo. Very, very low boost. This is, just getting started really with this S480 turbo. This thing is easily a 4-digit kind of level deal. And you can see we had fairly good boost response only because when we load this thing, we do an initial load on it, and so it artificially, demonstrates the low speed torque of this thing. But it made 628 horsepower, 629 horsepower, and peak torque checked in at 619 foot-pounds. But we also ran the turbo setup with the stock camshaft, And here is the stock camshaft. And you can see the two, if you look at the two power curves mirror what happened when we did the cam swap on the NA combinations. The turbo combination with the stock cam looks the same as the NA power curve. They're making peak power at almost identical RPM. With the stock camshaft, it made 554 horsepower at 5,200, so it was within 100 RPM of the NA motor, and 597 at 4,500. It made a little bit more torque at a little bit higher RPM with the turbo, and the reason for that is because we had a slightly rising boost curve. In fact, the boost was a little bit higher on the stock camshaft than it was on the low buck truck. The peak boost reading was 7.3 pounds on the stock camshaft, 6.6, 6.7. on the low buck truck camshaft. So really the gains between the low buck truck and the stock cam under boost, if we would have had an electronic controller so that we regulated it right at 7 pounds or 7.5 or 8 or whatever number we wanted to choose, the gains would have been even greater than they were. But as you can see, we've got good gains, and not only do we have good gains as you would expect when we add a turbo, because that always happens, but we got good gains from the camshaft, and the gains are there whether it's NA or under boost. And so basically they do the same thing, but it shows that we get good gains from this inexpensive, like I said, $179 camshaft. We get good gains. It works with a turbo. And by the way, it's also been run with, nitrous and a blower and all kinds of other stuff. So the cam does what the cam does, and it makes good power, and obviously works under boost as what we would expect. All right, Mr. Lord, please make sure, like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff, and I'll keep testing.